Hey, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be showing you how many sketchbooks I have going in one go. I'll give you a rough overview as to why I have so many and what different things I do in them, with the hope that it will help you make your own decisions with your sketchbooks or entertain you if you're just curious to know how one person has this many active sketchbooks. So let's get started. I was recently asked this question by Creating Cute Art, and if you don't know her, I will link her YouTube down below in the description. But she knows that I have multiple sketchbooks going and asked a question which I guess many may be wondering: why do you have so many and what do you do in them? To answer the question off the bat, I have 6 going in one go, and that's because I recently just finished one. So the most I've had in one go has been 7 sketchbooks. 5 of them are Moleskines, one of them is a Sakura, and the one that I finished is a Linden art one. I make weekly art tutorials, paint-alongs and vlogs, and when it comes to sketchbooks, the main thing that kind of determines what I decide on is the size, the paper that's inside, and ultimately what I think I'm going to be creating. I use a number of different medias. I like to paint a number of different subjects, and for the most part I like there to be some level of organization. Doesn't always work out that way, but that's the plan when I start. So let me show you. In terms of the first one, this one is a Moleskine watercolor sketchbook or watercolor notebook. It has 72 pages, which is 36 sheets of 200 GSM watercolor paper. This is one of my oldest sketchbooks, and this is a sketchbook that I initially started and reserved only for the most special of paintings because it was quite expensive compared to my first sketchbook, and if you haven't seen that, I'll link the sketchbook tour for you as well. This is a painting that I did when I was at Box Hill and overlooking all the hills, and I basically reserved this sketchbook for a number of different things, but anything that I thought I would do well. So watercolors, but also gouache, some line art as well, just anything that I thought would be really nice. I wanted to reserve for this sketchbook because it was the more expensive one at the time. So that's what's kind of dictated that. Then at this point I kind of didn't really like this painting, so after that I got a little bit more fluid with it and I started experimenting. I did this was for a YouTube video which I'll link for you as well, and just doing different things, and now slowly it has evolved into like a landscape sketchbook, and I'm more than halfway done. But that's basically why I had this one. This was initially reserved for my special projects. Now it's just one that I use for still things that I think are nice, but also primarily watercolors and gouache, not so much so ink or line work anymore. But this is one that I'm looking forward to like finishing because I've had it for almost 3 years now. Next is this. So this is another Moleskine sketchbook. It's an A5, this time portrait orientation. It has 88 pages, which is 44 sheets of 165 GSM. Let me show you. So I initially planned on having this as my rough sketchbook because it doesn't have watercolor paper. It just has like normal sketchbook or cartridge paper. So I thought, okay, it would be good for me to do like rough mixed media and plan things out. I've seen these beautiful sketchbook tours of like rougher or more experimental sketchbooks, and I really wanted to replicate that because at the moment most of my sketchbooks are just finished pieces. So this was me planning out a piece, and thereafter I realized that I don't like doing that. So I still tried to like use it as my rougher sketchbook and did this is the Himimiya gouache. So if you've seen my video, then you'll have seen this, where I basically swatched out the colors and then did a painting with it just to see. And yeah, from there I kind of went back to what I knew, which was doing finished pieces again with the Himimiya gouache. And this one I started in July 2021. Yeah, so I started it in July last year. And then from there I just did more gouache pieces. The other thing was, for example, here when I was comparing 3 different types of gouache, I did pieces here. So it's still kind of experimental, just primarily gouache. And the reason for that is that I don't think this paper will handle watercolor very well. And to be perfectly honest, it's barely holding up with gouache. Like, it doesn't feel as nice as it should do. And sometimes, because I layer quite a lot, the paper actually starts coming off with the water because it's not what it was meant to be for. So that's what I'm using it for: gouache experimenting or gouache landscapes. Then next one is, you guessed it, yet another Moleskine. But this is an A5 watercolor Moleskine, so similar to the first one, but this time again in portrait orientation. It has 72 pages of 200 GSM watercolor paper. It has a band. They all have like a little pocket in the back. And this one I actually did because this is for my watercolor florals. My previous sketchbook that I've just finished, and I'll link the sketchbook tour for you down below, had pretty much watercolor florals or a few gouache florals, some experimental, some more closer to finished pieces, and this was essentially going to be another one. My aim was actually to make it more experimental, but I just ended up doing pretty much finished pieces but experimenting with different things a little bit more. So that's what this is for, and essentially that will carry on from there and pretty much just be watercolor florals. I was thinking of doing a challenge where I like try and finish a sketchbook in, you know, X amount of time. And to be perfectly honest, the thing that I think I would be able to fill would be this sketchbook. Like I think I could do loose watercolor florals for days. So maybe I'll do that as a challenge and finish that in one day. We'll see. Then next is another A5 Moleskine watercolor sketchbook. Again, 72 pages, which is 36 sheets of 200 GSM paper. The paper does have texture, so it is cold pressed, but it's not like very, very heavy texture. So I think that's one of the reasons I gravitate quite a lot to the Moleskines, because of that texture. And this is like a special sketchbook because this is the most recent one, the newest one I've started, and it's from my trip in Italy. So this will essentially be like my urban sketching / holiday sketchbook. And I have this thing where for some reason, the first page I always find so intimidating. Let me know what you tend to do in the first page. Do you swatch? Do you do a beautiful title page? Do you just treat it like any other page? Or you like me and do you just leave it blank with the hope that one day you'll go back and never do? So then I skipped and I was like, okay, I'll try and be a little bit looser with this one. So I actually sketched out all the art materials that I kind of took with me, or that I considered that I may use on my trip, such as my Daniel Smith palette. This is my gouache palette, and that it's not finished yet, but at least it gave me a good idea of what I had. And then I did like other paintings. So for example, this is a painting when I was at a restaurant in Venice. This is when I was at the canal in Venice and just painting what I was seeing. And it was just absolutely amazing. So I did this as well. This is the same scene as here, but instead I did a sketch, and my aim for the sketch was to come back and do a watercolor painting. But one of the things that drives me crazy about the Moleskines is that the watercolor from another painting actually seeped all the way through. So instead I decided to do gouache, and somehow randomly this is what I got, which I really, really like. So shall I do a tape peel for you? Look at those crisp lines. Gosh, there's just something so satisfying about that. As we both relax to this satisfying tape peel, can I give you the gentle reminder to consider hitting the like button and the subscribe button if you enjoy this content and want to see more videos like this. It makes a massive difference to my channel, especially as I am still growing, and it just lets me know that I am not alone in this. So thank you so much. And also feel free to just say hi in the comments. I love reading them. I reply to every single one, and I just really love getting to know you, and that's how we've built a massive and amazing community of MVPs who I really, really appreciate. So thank you. Ta-da! So yeah, so this is like from my time in Italy, and I've done lots of different paintings. The order doesn't necessarily make sense. So this was from a live stream based on my imagination, I guess, of Italy. And then this was again from another live stream, and then I redid it again in private a few minutes after the live stream finished. So this will essentially be my urban sketching / travel notebook, or it may just end up being paintings of Italy from pictures that I've taken, or just pictures in general. So kind of like an inspirational one. And the reason that I wanted this is because I like the orientation, and I like having separate subjects. So for example, this one is my floral one, this one is my landscape one. So even though they're the same sketchbook, they make sense in my head if they are separate. That being said, this next one, so this is a Sakura sketchbook, which means it's not watercolor paper, it's just normal sketchbook paper. It has 80 sheets, which is 160 pages of 140 GSM paper. It is landscape orientation, and the reason that I got this was to be my like cheap mess around sketchbook. Like that's initially why I got it. I got it on sale. I think it was £5 for a sketchbook, so I was like, yeah, I can work with that. Slightly more expensive than my very first sketchbook, but not as expensive as my Moleskine. So this was the sketchbook that let me show you. So this is like my very first sketchbook when I wanted to kind of start upgrading from this sketchbook, but I didn't feel that I was ready for my Moleskine sketchbook, which was again, so I had all these three at the same time. I would basically go to this one, my in-between sketchbook. And this sketchbook, I mean, honestly, I think the biggest challenge is just how hefty. At the time, honestly, I thought the more pages, the better. I want a really thick sketchbook. But I must say, there is something satisfying about like completing a sketchbook. And I'm maybe 100 pages in, or what feels like 100 pages in, and I'm not done yet. I'm still like 2/3 of the way, so almost done. But essentially this was like my mess around sketchbook. I did, gouache in here. I've done watercolors. I've done line work, drawings, more line work, anything that I wanted. Still things that I thought would be good. Especially at this point, I had finished this sketchbook. So this became my main sketchbook for any medium that I was using. These are like gouache, for example, drawings, graphite. I worked it so hard that you can see the spine is starting to break. And then like more experiments, more florals, but I didn't just reserve it for florals. At least that wasn't my intention. At this point, it was just that I liked painting florals more, but I did do like experiments. So for example, this is again Venice. I didn't realize how many times I'd painted Venice, but clearly it was on my mind because this is Venice. You've already seen the other paintings of Venice that I did. I did things like, let me show you here. Some of you may know that I've released a free peony guide where I teach people how to draw peonies. And in terms of like working out how I was going to demonstrate that, this is where all that started. And then this was just because I had some like leftover paint that I didn't want to waste. And then this is from like our latest live streams. Again, just experimenting with gouache florals. So I think honestly, for the sake of finishing this book, it will be anything goes. The last active sketchbook that I have is this one. So this is again a Moleskine watercolor sketchbook in landscape orientation, and it gotta love that classic white page. It's the sketchbook that I started for the challenge that I was doing called Paintscape for Black History Month, where I essentially painted 15 landscapes from different countries in Africa. After that, I haven't really used it. So this I finished in November. And my aim for the rest of it is to just do landscapes. But before I finish this one, I want to finish this very first Moleskine because I mean it's been 3 years. So I'll finish this, and once I finish that, I will move on to this one and then use it for watercolors, gouache, the whole works. This system makes sense to me, but I appreciate it may not make sense to everyone. So in terms of like what determines what sketchbooks I get and what may help you in your sketchbook selection also is I like to divide it by the medium and the subject to a certain extent, right? Unless it's like my messy Sakura sketchbook where I can do florals, landscapes, animals, because of the paper and because there are so many sheets and I can just throw this in my bag and go. So if it's not my rougher sketchbook, then I just like to have some sort of order. In terms of things to actually consider when you're getting the sketchbooks, for me, it ultimately has to be a sketchbook that I am excited to create in, and that I'm looking forward to using. And as you can tell, I love buying sketchbooks. But in terms of like practical tips that you can think about, I think ultimately and most importantly, what paper is inside this sketchbook, because that is going to play a huge role as to whether you enjoy using this sketchbook or not. Let me know down below in the comments if you want me to go into more detail or create a separate video on this, and I will definitely do that because I love talking about sketchbooks. But just to give you some rough pointers, think about what kind of paper you have in there, whether you want it with texture such as cold press or smooth with hot press, how heavy you want the paper, so whether you want it thick like 300 GSM or maybe a bit thinner with maybe 200 GSM, whether you want it to be portrait or landscape orientation, what size you want it to be, and also consider the cover and whether it's going to be conducive to where you want to use it. Let me know down below in the comments if this makes sense to you. Do you do something similar, or does it all just seem wild? In my head, I do know that in theory I could consolidate some of the sketchbooks, especially as a lot of them have landscapes. But I just think this is a system that works for me, and I can't remember whose sketchbook tour I watched, but they basically said it's my sketchbook, I can do what I like, and I absolutely love that. So I think that's basically embodies what I'm doing here. To highlight my main preferences, they are A5, which is roughly, I think, 14 by 21 centimeters. The one thing I would say about the Moleskines is that they're actually narrower than normal A5. So I prefer them to be portrait orientation and have watercolor paper. I like to have some texture, but not so much that I can't then do line work. I also like quite thick paper, that's 200 to 300 GSM. I like hardback books that lay flat because I feel like they're more conducive to traveling. And I also like cold pressed paper, but not with too much texture. And to be honest, I want it to be affordable. I don't want the price to be a barrier to me using it. And at the moment, I'm not too precious as to whether it has cotton or not. I know the Moleskines have 25% cotton, but I'm quite flexible in that. And ultimately, the reason that I have so many different sketchbooks is because another thing that's really important to me is what I'm actually going to be creating in it and what I'm going to be creating with. So some things I feel will look better in a landscape format, and some things I feel will look better in a portrait format or with thicker paper, with thinner paper. There's just so many things to decide on. I've put a pen for reference, but at the moment the A5 Moleskine watercolor sketchbook is my favorite sketchbook. But if I'm completely honest, I haven't tried any of the other brands. I haven't tried like Etcher, I haven't tried CY, I haven't tried Fabriano, I haven't tried Stillman & Byrne, I haven't tried Strathmore. So I think maybe once I try all of them, I will then be able to like better advise on which for me is the better one. But for the moment, out of this sketchbook, which was £3 and didn't have any watercolor paper, versus the Sakura sketchbook that again doesn't have watercolor paper, the Moleskines are my favorite, and I'll let you know if that remains the case. Now, in terms of other sketchbooks, because this one's finished, so these are the ones that I don't necessarily grab all the time, but I do have, or that I have for different things. This is the Caddy paper sketchbook. It is made of 100% cotton rag recycled paper, and at the moment I haven't used it that much because to me it kind of behaves, it's different to like normal watercolor paper. At least I find it different, not good, not bad, just different. I like the effect, I like the speckled edges and everything, but it hasn't been one that I like to grab. And I think also because I'm quite rough on my sketchbooks, so I like to have hardback sketchbooks. But if you see, for example, this is a De La Rowley paper and this is the Caddy paper, and I just wanted did a comparison video here on YouTube to just show you the differences in how they behave. And then I've done primarily florals, but I don't think I will reserve this for florals. I'm more interested in the paper and how it handles different mediums and different things, different sceneries, than I am in the subject that goes in it. So I'll probably do this sketchbook as a mixed match of different subjects so that I know if I want to get this sketchbook again, what kind of things would I want to paint in it, if that makes sense. So this is my Caddy paper. Then next, these two sketchbooks I almost kind of made myself. So this one I made myself, and I basically used some foam board, some chipboard, and added discs, and then added the watercolor paper that I wanted inside. And the reason that I did this was just so that I would be able to take it out, put it back in. I just wanted to have that versatility of controlling what paper goes in it, and I'm in two minds as to what it will be. At the moment it is it was going to be / is a swatch book. So this is my swatch of the Paul Rubens paints, and I was just going to do a whole bunch of different swatches, but I've also done paintings in here, for example. So this is why I kind of created this. It'll either be a swatch book or it will be anything, but the thing that I love is that it can literally be anything. I can take out all these pages, add some more watercolor paper, and that's it, it's changed. The downside is just that I made it so thick. It has so much, half the book is actually the cover of the book as opposed to the pages, so that's one downside and something that I'll think about next time. Then this one is I hope you don't think I'm barbaric. So this was a Moleskine sketchbook. I tore two pieces. So I cut out the spine, I cut out each individual page. Why did I do that? Because I wanted to put rings. Like, I think one thing that perhaps as I'm looking at all these sketchbooks becomes evident is that I can be quite indecisive about what I want, where I want it. And I think that's why I have so many sketchbooks, to try to have some sort of order. But I thought I won't need an order if I put rings in it. So that's what I did. And this is going to be my swatch book. So this is the Daniel Smith watercolor dot cards. And if you haven't checked out that video, I can link it for you. But I found that I just like having more space to play around with the colors and have a bit of a better idea of how the colors behave. As you can see, for example, the swatches are just so much bigger. I can take off, I can see like the lifting properties, I can see the opacity a bit better. These are loose sheets, but I will essentially hole punch all of them and add them to this as well. And then as you can see, I have the rest of the pages empty and ready to go. This is like, for example, when I was going on holiday, I was trying to figure out what kind of red I wanted to take with me, because I had an idea of what kind of reds would be in Venice and what kind of reds would be in Italy. So I was just like playing around with different colors, mixing them and doing that. Then I was trying to figure out, okay, I'll have a limited palette. I have like 8 blues. Which of the blues will I take with me? And honestly, up until swatching the Daniel Smith blues and doing this exercise, which I think I actually did first, I didn't realize like how different, you know, blues were. I was like, oh yeah, I'll just take any blue. I'll take 2 blues. And then for ages, I was just looking at these blues like, which blue should I take? They're all so different. They're also, you know. So that's why I did this. And then I kind of made notes on what I liked about it, what I didn't like about it, to then decide what blue I would be taking with me. These are like the Winsor & Newton designer gouache swatches, which again, I will hole punch and add. These are the Turner acrylic gouache swatches. These are the Winsor & Newton Cotman swatches. So I'll put all of these in here and then I'll have a bit of a better system. And then the other thing is, and I know it sounds crazy, I also have like a small A5 Moleskine that I was just going to use as a swatch book. And the reason I was going to do that is I won't do it so that I can move colors around. I'll literally do it so I can play with color, learn color mixing, have an idea of what colors I have, and also be able to carry it with me to a shop, for example. Whereas it would be too much to carry this and not that helpful carrying this because it only has like 15-20 pages. If you are still watching, then you are a real MVP and I really appreciate you. So thank you so much. Let me know that you're still listening by either quickly telling me what kind of sketchbook size you like working in, such as A6, A5 or A4, and I'll leave a picture and a pen for reference. Or if you want to tell me even more, because I love talking about this, then just tell me like, what kind of sketchbooks do you use? What's your favorite brand? What do you use it for? What is it, watercolor sketchbook or normal sketchbook? Is it messy? Is it neat? Just tell me all about it and I will read it all and reply to them all. So thank you so much for watching. I've done quite a few hauls, which I'll link for you here, but in them I bought quite a few sketchbooks that I also need to try out. To think of a few, that's the Etcher, Paul Rubens. I also have Fabriano and Sea White. So I will test them out and I will let you know. But definitely check out those hauls if you're interested and you love seeing art supplies. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video and I will see you next week. Bye.